Hello and welcome students to my channel. In today's lecture, I am going to explain you for C processor concept and in pre-processing concept what type of translations are getting performed. That also we are going to see. See what happens when we provide any programming language to the computer, because computer has got only 0 1 understanding. Most of the times whatever inputs you are providing as a programming language is very high level. So always as a coder we type something, but that cannot get easily converted into binary. So what is required? There are series of translator that can be used, and those translators we need to understand properly. So let me just show you few discussions that you need to understand first in the form of this PPT, and then I will demonstrate you the basic use of preprocessor. Okay, now see, this is the source file. This source file is actually written by the developer, and we know that there is a high level language that we are providing. But the final thing that we need always is to create executable. Why? Because executables are only understand a particular type of format that will be executed by your operating system. So processor has got lots of challenges. How? First of all, your source code file gets pre-processed, and before compilation only these all things are getting ready. So whenever you pre-process the file, it goes to compiler, then after compiler it goes to assembler is going to have assembly code, and basically what happens, the assembler criterias are more important because they are natively considered to get converted into 0 and 1. So it's easy way to convert assembler to binary. And one more thing, when we have this concept of understanding, suppose you are writing C code that gets pre-processed, then you get an intermediate code. So there is no direct output you will get after pre-processing. So after pre-processing, after intermediate language creation, you have a compilation. And once you have a compilation, the final outcome you can consider. So pre-processor we need to study. In terms of advanced C, we need to understand what is the use of preprocessor. So preprocessor has got a responsibility of defining macros, or rather I can say a developer can define a macro that gives command to the preprocessor. So if you want to write some commands, if you want to write some disciplines to be given to the preprocessor, then you can actually go for writing those macros. So, what basically are the macros? Macros you can consider they are also a preprocessor, and you can define them. A macro can be defined by the developer, and it can be compiled after a transformation of the program that you type. So, if I want to apply the macro, we know that there are header files that we write. So, whatever header files we write, they are considered as a preprocessor directives. Why? Because these header files are only understood by the preprocessor. Then if you want to provide any functions also, those functions can be defined with respect to your preprocessors. Those macros can be defined with respect to your preprocessor. So let me give you one example of preprocessor that can be used in terms of implementation. So let us go to the coding part where we can understand a basic macro. Okay, so I'm using Turbo C++ software, and with respect to this software, we are going to start the first ever macro, how to write with the basic one. So I will go to the file, then new, and I will just clear this old part and let us write a fresh code. So see what happens if you want to write a macro. First of all, you are going to write header file. So header files are important. This is the first header file, that is standard input output. We have second header file, conio.h. Then we are going to write a macro. So how to write a macro? A basic macro. hash define. This is compulsory. Whenever you want to declare a macro, hash define you need to write. And when the hash define you have declared, you are going to write a name of macro. Okay. So name of macro, suppose I want to take ABC. So the name of macro is ABC, and you need to provide certain value. Now this value is a constant, and this is a name of macro. So every macro will be included on a separate line. That what you need to remember. And each macro, each header file is to be written separately on a single line. So how I can use this macro? How this macro can be used within a void main? So I will write void main because from here our actual program starts. And I'm going to use a printf because I want to just print message or any content on the screen directly. So I will say value of macro ABC is percent %d. See here you cannot define a data type. Here inside printf you can write a percent %d with respect to a data type. So I am directly calling that macro here, and let us check what output comes there so that we can get an idea how macros are getting called or getting implemented within that particular program. So if I want to execute, I will use Alt R and I will just run this program. So you can see this ABC is 6. The value of ABC is 6. So after compilation, 6 is given as output, and you are able to see 6 is here. But when you are declaring your macro, or calling your macro with respect to printf, automatically the 6 is getting displayed. So this is basically an instruction, a simple instruction given to the preprocessor by developer. So whenever you are going to study unit 1, your focus need to be on macros. It's not about basic macro only. There are different types of macros are there. One by one each macro will study, but you need to have a focus on the macro declaration, then calling of macro, and even you can utilize macros with respect to variables as well. So that is major concern with respect to this code you need to have. Now one more thing, whenever you are going to have understanding with respect to macros, there is one more definition that you need to understand how macros are important. So, whatever may be the type of variables you are going to use or type of declarations you are going to do, macros are allowing developer to write reusable code. Now, this ABC can be called number of times. So I can reuse this particular ABC again and again. ABC means a macro can be used, and you can actually go with the macros where this basically is to be used in terms of C programming specifically. Even we can have C, C++ in combination, but this piece of code has got a value associated with it. So if you want to write a macro name, so this is a macro name ABC, and when you are going to write a specific value, that value is a constant, and that going to remain fixed throughout. And one more thing, if you are going to write a macro, they are the very much important kind of things, and macros are not pointed to the memory locations. So that is one more thing you need to remember. So whenever you are using macro need to have a particular name, macro need to have a particular value. Now this is a basic macro, so again I'm telling a macro name and the value is appreciated. Second thing, you cannot provide semicolon at the end. That's the rule for declaring macro. Hash define is compulsory, but with hash define, the name of macro is compulsory and the value of macro is compulsory. So whenever you are going to use a preprocessor directives or commands, whenever C program is getting compiled, before that these activities are going on. So whenever you are using this directives, preprocessor handles it very useful way. So if you are defining macros, the macro name is important, and corresponding value is important, and macro name is replaced by the value throughout the program. So when you execute the program, macro name is replaced by the value. That is most important to understand. So I hope basic macro declaration by the code, by the PPT declaration is clear to you. So in upcoming lecture, I will explain or start explaining about different types of macros, whether it's a macro with argument, parameterized macro, then macro with you can refer as a conditional macro, then you have inbuilt, that is predefined one. So all these types of macros we are going to learn in unit 1. And with respect to FYBCA NEP 2024 pattern, the first ever focus students need to have in semester 2 is lots of practice is required to execute this code, because just to write macro is not that big deal, but what and for why we are using macro is most important. So I hope this is understood by you. Thank you very much. Thank you and keep learning.